So our next topic is points and crossings. What are the points and crossings? These are nothing but the arrangement by which different routes, either it may be parallel or diverging route, which are connected to facilitate the trains to move from one track to the another track without any obstruction. Means what? Points and crossings are the arrangements by which a train can move from one track to the another track, either parallel to or diverging from the main track. Okay, so we will see the next point is turnouts. So what is turnout? Turnouts is nothing but it is a simplest combination of points and crossings which enables one track, either it may be branch line or the siding, to take off from the another track. Means if the train has to change its path from main line to the branch line, the combination of points and crossings is nothing but the turnouts. So what it facilitates? It facilitates safe movement of trains in either direction on both the tracks. So it facilitates safe movement of trains. Means if there are two trains and if one train want to move in a onto a branch track, then it will this turnouts, that is a combination of points and crossing, will help in safe movement of trains in either direction on both the tracks. Okay, so these turnouts are classified into two types depending upon the turn taken, whether it is taken towards the right hand or left hand. So first is the left hand turnout. The turnout which diverts the train to the left is called as left hand turnout. When the train diverts in a left side towards the left side, that type of turnout is called as left hand turnout. And when the train diverts when the turnout diverts the train to the right, that turnout is called as right hand turnout. So what are turnouts? It is a combination of points and crossings which helps the train to divert from one main track to the branch track. Okay, it may be left hand turnout or right hand turnout. See, in this figure we can see the diagram, we can see the left hand turnout and the parts of the turnout. See, this is the main track and this is the branch line. This is on the left side. So the turnout which helps the train to divert in the left side is called as left turnout. Okay, and this is the right hand turnout. This is the main track. This is the diverging track, and it is in the right side. So the turnouts which helps the train to turn in the right direction, it is called as right hand turnout. So these are the components. This is the point, that is switch blades. This is the stretcher. This is the toe of the switch. This is the heel of the switch. These are the stock rails. These both are the stock rails. These are the check rails. This is crossing. These are the wing rails. These are the running rails. Okay. These are the images showing the right hand and left hand turnout. So see, this is the right hand turnout and this is left hand turnout. So now we have seen the parts of turnout in the right hand turnout. Just we will write in points. A pair of points or switches. The parts of turnout consist of a pair of point or switches, a pair of stock rails, a V crossing. See, we have seen, see, a pair of switches, stock rails, then V crossing. This is the V crossing. Okay, then two check rails, four lead rails, switch tie plate or a gauge tie chair and crossing tie plate, studs or stops, bearing plates, sled chairs, stretcher bars. For operating these points, rods and cranks and levers are used. For locking the system, locking box, bar and plunger bar are used. See, these are the two check rails, these are the running rails, and these are the wing rails. And this is V crossing. Okay, so we will see the important terms which are used in the point and crossing. First one is the facing direction. So what is facing direction? If we stand at the toe of the switch and look towards the crossing, then the direction is called as facing direction. For example, this is the toe of the switch. So if we stand in this direction at this point, and if we are facing here, right? So this side is called as facing direction. And trailing direction, if someone stand at the crossing and look towards the switches, then the direction is called as trailing direction. See, if we are standing at the toe of the switch and we are looking in this side, then this is called as the facing direction towards the crossing. And if we are standing here, okay, what is trailing? If someone stand at crossing and look towards the switches, then the direction is called as trailing direction. So if we stand here at the crossing and if we are looking toward the switch, this direction is called as trailing and this direction is called as facing direction. Okay, now facing points of turnouts. When a train travels from the switch to the frog, the points are known as facing points of the turnouts. And trailing points of turnouts are when a train travels in the direction from the crossing to the switches. The points are called as trailing points. So from switch to the frog, when train moves from switch to the frog, the points are called as facing points. And when train travels from crossing towards the switch, then the points are called as trailing points. See, when from moving from crossing to the switches, these are called as trailing points. And while moving here in the facing direction, the points are called as facing points. So what are a pair of switches? A switch, turnout or point is a mechanical installation enabling train to be guided from one track to the another. They are nothing but the turnouts or points which helps the train to move from one track to the another. Okay, so here you can see here are the switches provided. So in turnouts, what we can see a pair of stock rails. Okay, what are those? They are the main rails of the track to which the tongue rails fit closely against them to facilitate smooth working of the tongue rail. Stock rails are the main rails to which the tongue rails fit closely. For what? To facilitate them the smooth working of the tongue rail. Now for that we have to know that what are the tongue rails? The tapered rails whose thicker end known as heel are fixed to the main track and the thinner end known as toe of the switch to the to obtain a tongue fit with the respective stock rails are called as tongue rails, switch rails or point rails. It may be called as tongue rails, switch rails or point rails. Tongue rails are nothing but tapered ones whose thicker ends are connected known as heel are fixed to the main track and the thinner ends known as toe of the switch with the respective stalk rails. So you can see this is the toe which are connected to the main rails, and this is the heel connected to the stalk rails. See, these are the stalk rails, right? And these are the running rails. These are the main rails. So the thicker ends are connected to the toe of the switch, and the thinner ends are connected to the, that is the toe. Thicker end is the tapered rails, are those thicker ends known as heel are fixed to the main track, and the thinner end known as toe are fixed to the stalk rails. The thicker ones are known as the heel, they are connected to the main rails. See, these are the main rails. And the toe, which is thinner one, are connected to the stalk rails. These are nothing but tongue rails or switch rails or point rails. Now what is switch? A switch rail consists of a tongue rail and a stalk rail. A said switch is known as points which divert the train from one track to the another track. Okay, so is it clear what are stalk rails, tongue rails, switch? Okay, now we will move towards the V crossing. To provide the gap between the rails to be crossed so that the wheel flanges can pass through these gaps without any obstruction, V crossing is provided. Gaps between the rails to be crossed. So this is the V crossing. Gap provided while crossing so that the wheel flanges can pass through these gaps without any obstruction. Now the next point is to check rails. To check the tendency of wheels to climb over the crossing. So here it is V crossing. The check rails are provided so that the train can climb at the crossing. To check the tendency of wheels to climb over the crossing, two check rails are provided. 4 lead rails, that are running rails, to lead the track from heel of the switch to the toe of the crossing. Okay, to lead the track from heel of the switch to the toe of the crossing. See here. These are nothing but 4 lead rails which are used to lead the track from heel of the switch to the toe of the crossing. And what are switch type plates? The switch type plates are used to maintain the gauge distance at the front of the switch. Okay. Now these important terms are clear. What are stalk rails, tongue rails, switch, V crossing, two check rails, 4 lead rails, switch type plates. Okay. Now we will move towards studs or stops. These are all parts of the turnouts that we have seen in the image. These studs or stops are used to maintain the alignment of the track. What are the side chairs? The side chairs are used to support the tongue rails throughout their length. We have studied what are chairs. So side chairs are nothing but chairs are used to support the rails, to connect the rails, to hold the rails. Okay. So side chairs are nothing but the chairs which are used to support the tongue rails throughout their length. Now what is stretcher bar? To connect the toe of both the tongue rails so that each tongue rail moves through same distance. What is stretcher bar? It is a part which is used to connect the toe of both the tongue rails so that each tongue rail moves through the same distance. See, this is the stretcher bar and these are the tongue rails. So tongue rails are used to hold the to connect the toe of both the tongue rails so that each tongue rail moves through the same direction distance. So what are rods, ranks and levers? They are used to operate the points. And docking system is used to maintain the timing between the signal and the tongue rails. Okay. The parts of the turnouts. So this is the end of the stock rail. This is the facing direction, and in this direction there will be trailing direction. This is the throw off switch. This is the tongue rail. This is the stretcher bar. Okay. This is the leading rail. This is the straight lead rail. These are the check rails and these are the wing rails, and this is the crossing. Theoretical nose of crossing. This part is called as theoretical nose of crossing, and this part is known as actual nose of crossing. Okay. These are the constituents of a turnout, and the left hand turnout is given by this figure. These are the check rails. This is the facing direction. This is the main line. This is the turnout, left turnout. These are the check rails. Now we will move towards the sleepers, which are laid for the points and crossings. There are two types of sleepers that we use for the points and crossings. First is the through sleepers and second is the interlaced sleepers. So what are through sleepers? These sleepers are provided on both the railway tracks, that is main line and branch line. What is the purpose of using these through sleepers? It helps in maintaining the level of the both the tracks, that is the main track and the branch track or the turnout. The purpose is to the purpose of providing this rough sleeper is to maintain the both tracks at the same levels. Next, interlaced sleepers are used. Why these sleepers are used? These sleepers are led when long sleepers are not available. When there is unavailability of the long sleepers, these interlaced sleepers are laid at the points and crossings. This is the image showing the interlaced sleepers, and this is the image showing the through sleepers. Clear? Now we will move towards the type of switches. We have seen the switch. Switch is consist of the tongue rail and the stock rails. Okay. Switch, a stock rail and its respective tongue rail forms a switch. So we will see the types of switches. There are two types, the stub switch, the split switch. Two types, that is stub switch and the split switch. So we will see what is stub switch. No separate tongue rail is provided in the stub switch. In the type of stub switch, no separate tongue rail is provided, and some portion of the main track is moved from side to side. Some portion of the main track is moved from side to side. The second part is the split switch. Split switch consists of two parts, a stalk rail and a tongue rail. So what can we see the difference between the stub switch and the split switch? That split switch consists of two parts, a stalk rail and a tongue rail. But in stub switch there is no separate tongue rail provided. Okay. So split switch is distinguished into further two types. First one is the loose heel type, which is also called as articulated type switch, And second one is the fixed heel type or the spring switch, or it is also called as flexible switch. Okay, so we will see one by one. What is loose heel type switch, which is also called as articulated type? In this type of switch, tongue rails are joined to the lead rails by means of fish plates. Okay, how the tongue rails are joined to the lead rails by means of fish plates are used for joining tongue rails to the lead rails. Okay, two front bolts are kept loose to allow the throw of the switch, and these bolts are kept tight when the tongue is open. Okay, they are kept loose. It consists of two front bolts. They are kept loose to allow the throw of the switch, and these bolts are kept tight when tongue is open. So see, you can see this is the trailing direction, this is the facing direction. We are facing from here. Okay, this is the switch angle. So these are the tongue rails. Okay, so tongue rails are joined to the lead rails. These are the tongue rails joined to the lead rails. This type of switches are suitable for the short length switches. Loose heel type switch is suitable for, or articulated type is suitable for short length. Okay. Then we will see the fixed heel type, which is also called as flexible type. This is an improvement over loose heel type switch. In this type, all the four bolts are tight when the tongue is closed. Okay, or the four bolts are tightened when the tongue is closed. It gives the satisfactory results when long tongues are used. Okay, it is suitable for long tongue rails only. See, what is the difference between fixed heel type and loose heel type? First of all, two front bolts are kept loose and the other two are tightened. But in case of fixed heel type, all the four bolts are tightened when the tongue is closed. The loose heel type is suitable for the short length tongues, but the fixed heel type is used for the long tongue rails. Okay, so this is the difference between the loose heel type switch and the fixed heel type switch. So fixed heel type switches is used more as compared to the loose heel type. As compared to the fixed heel type switches have drawbacks. Okay, these are the lead rails and these are the tongue rails. They are joined to each other. Tongue rails are joined to lead rails. Now we will see the various shapes of switches. Based on the shapes, these switches are classified into three types. First one is the undercut switch, second is the split cut switch, and third one is the overriding switch or the composite switch. So we will see one by one. First is the undercut switches. In this type of switch, see figure B, old undercut switch. In this type of switch, the tongue rail, okay, the tongue rail at the toe of the switch is planed to a very fine edge at the top and cut. This tongue rail here it is cut and it is made planed to a very fine edge. Okay, so that the tongue is accommodated under the head of the stock rail. Okay, got it clear? This tongue rail, the toe of the tongue rail is planed to a very fine edge at the top and it is cut. Why it is cut? So that it can accommodate under this head of the stock rail. The head of the stock rail is straight. See, the head of the stock rail is straight or slightly planed, as the foot of the stock rail should be properly cut away to accommodate the foot of the tongue rail. This foot of the stock rail, mainly we can see the shape of rail is this way. Okay, here the stock rail foot is cut down. Why it is cut down? To accommodate the foot of this tongue rail. Okay, so this type is the old undercut switch, and this type is the modified form of the undercut switch. In this modified form of the undercut switch, only about half the wave of the tongue rail is below the head of the stock rail. Only half portion of the wave of the tongue rail is below this head of the stock rail, and width of the tongue rail is increased. Thus, the tendency of splitting of the tongue rail is considerably less, okay, from the stock rail. So, the tendency of tongue rail to loose is reduced. Okay, then we will see the move toward the straight cut switch. So, in this type of switch, as we know that is straight cut switch, the tongue rail is kept straight in line with the stock rail. See, the tongue rail is kept straight with the stock rail. Thus, the thickness of the toe of the tongue rail becomes thick, and thereby its strength is increased. As this tongue rail is made straight to the stock rail, the thickness of the toe or the tongue rail will increase, hence its strength will also increase. For this type of switch, the stock rail is jogged by an amount which is equal to the thickness of the tongue at 13 mm from the toe. Okay, so this is the straight cut switch where the tongue rail is made straight and which is kept straight in line with the stock rail. Then we will see the overriding switch. In this type of switch, separate rail sections are adopted for the stock rail and the tongue rail. Okay, these are the light section tongue rail and heavy section tongue rail. These are the separate rail sections. So these rail sections are adopted in this overriding switch type. The stock rail is of heavy section. This stock rail is of heavy section, while this tongue rail is of light section. Okay, the tongue rail rides over the foot of this stock rail. See, we can see this tongue rail rides over the foot of the stock rail. Okay, the packing piece is provided. This is the packing piece on the slide share. Packing piece is provided as we can see in this figure. This design of switch will not be useful when loose heel type of switch. Okay, this is not suitable when there is a loose heel type of switch, because the different fish plates will be used and this will result in the further weakening of the joints. Okay, so what are the types of switch that we have learned based on the shape? That is the old undercut switch. Then some modifications are made. So the modified undercut switch, this is the modified undercut switch. Second is the straight cut switch. Third one is the overriding switch, and the modified one is called as modified overriding switch. In this switch, there are some modifications made. See, this is the stock rail. This is the tongue rail which is over this, rides over the foot of the stock rail. Okay, this is the modified one.